The truth is that every force evolves a form. This was first said by Mother Ann Lee, who was the founder of the Shaker movement in America. The Shakers are probably most famous for their style of furniture, which reflected this sensibility, that every force that impacts on something evolves how it looks. And as designers, we design with constraints. We're up against time, we're up against budget, we're up against tools, we're up against technology, we're up against underlying platforms and limitations and database issues and bandwidth issues and all sorts of things. So every force that impacts what we do plays a role in what it looks like when we're done. In any project, for any kind of product, there are multiple forces that affect the design and development process. Okay, audience needs, client desires, ethical obligations, right? Are we going to do the right thing here? What could harm people? What dark patterns might we introduce that might get people in trouble? Aesthetic inclinations. What are people's personal opinions about what looks good? All right, that worms its way in there more often than we would like to admit. Technology constraints or limitations. What will this particular CMS platform do? What will this mobile app framework allow us to do? What does Google's material design platform dictate is the smartest thing in this situation because people are already familiar with it, used to it? Cultural presuppositions, right? Do we really understand what this word means to people from different backgrounds? What this label means? Will they understand what that icon means? Functional requirements. What actually has to happen? What tasks and activities do people need to undertake? How does data get entered, stored, saved, manipulated, etc.? Material properties. What are we talking about? Are we talking about a 6-inch screen? Are we talking about a 50-inch TV with user interface? Are we talking about a laptop? Are we talking about the dashboard in my car that has a digital screen in it? What are the material properties? What's the physical form of this? How much time do we have to do any of this work, right? Do we have 6 months or do we have 2 weeks? Two completely different sets of constraints. What's the available budget? How much can we spend on this, internally or externally? How much is the client paying us to do this? All right, all those things absolutely affect what we do. Available resources. How many people do we have? And do we have enough people to conquer all these things? The form of a digital product is also the result of an elaborate balancing act between UI design, information architecture, front-end HTML and CSS, middle-tier logic, back-end data structures, and programming and processes. All these things together absolutely have an impact on what the final UI is. Okay, so you can't just go off and say, all right, I think the UI should look like this without talking to any of the people responsible for all these things on the screen. All right, it's a collaborative effort. It has to be. There are too many moving parts here. And you, as a UI designer, in addition to the principles that I'm going to teach you here, in addition to the examples I'm going to show you and the things I'm going to teach you how to be able to do, you have to do all that in the context of these forces that are acting upon what you do that may be limiting or constraining what you do. So don't use form follows function as a prescription. If you do that now, stop it. Pure function is rarely the most important factor of success, no matter how vehemently some folks responsible for underlying functionality will argue otherwise. Instead, you got to focus on the relative importance of form and function. When making design decisions, that criteria should inform the balance between those two things. Remember that every force evolves form again and again and again. The trade-offs you'll have to make require you to be flexible. You got to be mindful of how this affects your success criteria. You should allow the description of form follows function to guide your efforts. It's an aesthetic guide. Objects with different functions should also look different aesthetically. Beauty can and does come from function, by the way. A gaming app shouldn't look like an enterprise system, right? Context. Each one has a different function, and that function is what helps to define what makes it successful. So finally, UI design mantra number 4 is that every force evolves form.